It's about people. The school has probably done more than virtually any other institution to transform the bar, and through the bar, all kinds of other parts of the professional lives of the city. If you look back at pictures of our earliest classes, you will see faces the likes of which you see very few of, if at all, in other law schools. You see women in numbers unlike any other school. You see people of color. And of course, we were the school of entree into the profession for many, many years, for every wave of immigrants that this city has known, and we continue to be that. Our graduates are represented not just in law firms and not just in businesses, but also at the top of the profession, in the judiciary, where hundreds of people who call themselves judge count themselves as alumni of this school. And that's just one example of the ways in which we have had an impact on Chicago and the legal community. What stayed the same is largely the intellectual content of the first year. And that makes a certain kind of sense, because any legal system has to educate its lawyers about some baseline questions. What are human relationships with one another? What constitutes an agreement? And what's an enforceable agreement? Law of contracts. What about the law when one person hurts another? The law of torts, law of injury. What is our relationship to the physical world, or the things that grow out of the physical world? That is the law of property, and so on and so on. What kinds of offenses are so grave that they cause the community to step in? Criminal law, and of course then what's the structure of government, constitutional law, rights against the government, and what's the language that lawyers speak with each other? Procedure. Those things have remained constant. What's different is the large variety of courses, some of which have begun to affect the first year, that recognize that law is not just a sterile and autonomous discipline, but it's virtually connected with everything in the lives of ordinary people and the day-to-day work of those people. So there are courses that recognize this by talking about the influence of psychology and history on law, that specialize in areas of law that didn't exist 100 years ago, the latest wave of which are things dealing with the internet law and things like that. All specialized courses that grow out of the basic courses that we get in the first year. So that's the way legal education has changed at the course level. Legal education has changed in response to those who are in it. The opening up of the profession to men and women of color, and especially to women, has changed the way in which even the most basic subject matters have been analyzed and approached, not just in the classroom, but academically. And that's lent a greater humanity to law. So I think the core questions that we've been asking for 100 years and more, and the answers are more nuanced and more humane. We've been at the forefront of professional knowledge, professional inquiry, and professional action. I think not just in our student product, but in our intellectual and professional contributions, we have a legacy that we can be proud of and that we can build on. But I think the greatest distinguishing feature of its past is that it's always been thinking of the future. And not just in who could become and who ought to become members of the profession. As I said, those people who are otherwise allowed in only in the smallest of numbers or not allowed in at all. The people who have been at the margins in some ways of American society, brought into the core through DePaul and some schools like DePaul. But also in the ways in which we think about our intellectual and professional jobs, the institutes that we've started, the work that our faculty members have done, again, in tort and social policy, in public interest law, expanding it from conceptions that were purely domestic and purely criminal to international criminal law and all of its meanings, to intellectual property and talking about the various foundations that go into intellectual property and what that might mean for topics as diverse as innovation and climate change and other kinds of things. Things that people aren't thinking of, our faculty members are thinking of. And that portends a future, I think, as bright as this institution's last 100 years.